The Benedictine order can be best described by saying it is a unity and it is diversity. It is both. This webpage and these pages will be dedicated to the American Benedictine Foundation. Most of these slides and most of these presentations can fall under the different titles of showing the ways that we are both united and diverse in our different congregations of Benedictines here in the United States. This is an introductory PowerPoint and presentation. So, why should we look at the history of the Benedictine order, and particularly why should we look at the history of Benedictines in America? Well, the Benedictines, of men and women, have always had this forward-moving motion. We've always been a driving force of history, so to speak. Now, this force has been directed by the meaning and trying to find meaning in the life, death, birth, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. But it is a force, nonetheless, that has caused the Benedictines to be at the heart of European history and the history of America, as more and more Catholic immigrants from Germany and from Ireland came to our shores here in the United States. This look at history has also been always important to the Benedictines themselves, and as a Benedictine it is something of importance to me. From the time of Venerable Bede, who was an English Benedictine from the Middle Ages, the study of history itself has always been key to our nature. It is the one thing that has caused us to be studied and to study, with the exception of sacred scripture and our rule. It is the only other thing that has been a constant to us, just as we have been a constant in history itself. There is a reason the Benedictines are considered the co-patrons of Europe, and why Father Benedict himself is the co-patron and co-protector of Europe. It is because of this evangelization that came from the Benedictine spirit and the Benedictine way of life, and the way that we brought Christ and light, from the Catholic point of view, to the heathens and the barbarians of Europe. So the Benedictine order, the best way, let's try to figure out ways to describe it. Columbus Stewart, a Benedictine, says that really we're not actually an order as you would consider other orders like the Franciscans or the Jesuits or the Dominicans, these highly regulated groups with strict hierarchies and a vicar general who has severe oversight and superiors who have interlinking oversight and this hierarchical structure, almost paramilitary. Instead, Columbus says, we're not actually an order, but a federation of tribes with a common heritage. And this is a good way to look at it. The different congregations which Benedictine monasteries are arranged into are very much like tribes that share a common heritage of the rule and of the dialogues and of tradition, of ora and labora, of lectio divina, of meditation, of prayer, of chant. But we are very much diverse. Every abbot is still abbot, and there is very little control that his superiors, even the abbot president or the abbot primate of the order, can have without severe need and necessity. Pope Pius XI said, the Benedictine order is no order, but disorder. And it's important because Pope Pius here will be one of the popes who will organize the Benedictines into what are called congregations. Prior to him, any abbey, particularly any abbey nullius, but also any abbey in general, was directly under the Holy Father, or directly under its superior abbey. For example, in this case of Cluny, which had some 100 dependent priories and abbeys, that did look to Cluny for guidance and support. But for the most part, each abbey was a kingdom unto itself, and each abbot its own king. The abbot is actually still exempt from the diocese. The abbey and the monastery are not considered property of a diocese, so long as it is a canonically erect abbey. A priory is a slightly different matter, and an abbot nullius is a far stronger matter. But still, it is this chaos that the Pope tried to correct by organizing us into congregations. Now, we are a living tradition, as I said. We are seeking God in community through work and prayer. Ora, prayer, and labora is a common cry of the Benedictines and a common way to describe us. And we live according to our rule, a rule penned by Saint Benedict in the 500s. Important to note, by saying Saint Benedict, that does not mean the man's name was Benedict. Benedict just means blessed man. It's kind of interesting. The Franciscans have Saint Francis. The Dominicans have Saint Dominic. The Jesuits have Saint Ignatius. The Benedictines just have a title. We don't know the actual name of our founder. All we know is he was a good guy, a holy and just man. The rule he penned, 72 chapters. It is very temperate compared to its contemporaries, and is very kind and very understanding of the human condition. He urges that even though the abbot is to be respected, that the abbot is never to drive his flock too far that it should scatter, or never to try so hard to remove the rust from a vessel that he cracks and breaks the vessel. He's supposed to be temperate, and he's supposed to be kind, and he's supposed to protect his sheep, his monks, and allow them to grow, but not allow them to be sinful and slothful. It's a very interesting rule, and there will be links to it. The rule was penned here. Monte Cassino is one of the original foundations of the Benedictine order, and it was founded in the 500s. It was built above a Roman temple, and this picture actually does not give it justice. That hill is high, it is steep, it is a nightmare. And Monte Cassino sits at two major crossroads in Italy, and because of that it has been attacked many times. So you can see it's fortress-like fortifications. Most recently, the monastery was completely destroyed by the Allies of all people during World War II, who they bombed it, thinking the Germans had set up camp there, even though the Germans had only allowed 2 people to enter the monastery. One was a medic who was summoned by the monks to care for some of the civilians, and one was a priest, or soon-to-be priest, who was actually a German officer who had a carte blanche from the Holy Father to be ordained and to enter the monastery. But other than that, the Germans respected the grounds. It's an interesting note. Though the bones in the tomb of St. Benedict survived, as did all the monks who had sought refuge in the tomb and prayed during the bombing. But this is one of the original foundations, and it dates back and it is ancient. Another aspect that helps guide our life is the life of St. Benedict. Now this is Book 2 of the Dialogues of St. Gregory the Great Pope who penned many of the dialogues. Now, it is from these dialogues, and from this life of St. Benedict, that we get his title, that we get the name Benedict, or Blessed Man. But Pope Gregory did not give us the name. He did not give us his true and legal name, but he just said Benedict, this holy man, this holy monk, who should be emulated. Now this life of St. Benedict, these dialogue stories, show many miracles attributed to the saint, and many accounts of his early followers. Everything from walking on water to raising the dead. It's a very good read. This is a translation that's new and out by Terence Cardong, a monk and scholar of the Americans. So if we look, the Benedictines in America, or in the United States to be more importantly and specific, came first in 1846. They came with Father Boniface Wimmer and his Bavarian monks, who we will talk about later. And they came to a little town called Carrolltown, Pennsylvania. Carrolltown is located in west central Pennsylvania. And they soon moved to the area of Latrobe, taking control of a diocesan parish called St. Vincent's, which is why St. Vincent's Arch Abbey today, the principal house of the American Cassinese congregation, is still the only Benedictine monastery in the world under the patronage of St. Vincent de Paul. It is also a Benedictine parish, but a parish that belongs to the diocese, but one that is designed so that the successor, the pastor, is always the abbot and his successor. From Pennsylvania, in 1846, we get movement to Illinois as well, in 1854. This will be with the coming of the Swiss. They will move there, and they will function more with the Native Americans and the missionaries, as a missionary-type character and charism. From 1854 to 1900, there is a massive change. A massive influx of Benedictine monasteries, and as you can see, we spread rapidly and spread well. This was ushered by in large part, the number of German immigrants who had come, but also the Czech, the Pole, and particularly with the American Cassinese congregation, due to our desire to work in parishes and the desire to care for those who needed priests who spoke their language and the ability to provide them. We spread and our monasteries proliferated quickly. By 2000, you can see there's very few states that do not have a monastery. Very, very few states in the United States that do not have a monastery. Though sadly, with the current trend, more and more states are losing their monasteries by lack of vocations. You can see here monasteries established in North America. There were 26 in the 19th century and an additional 44 in the 20th. So let's take a look at the Benedictines. You have missionary Benedictines. We have actually there were two main congregations. Boniface Wimmer and the Bavarians, which founded the American Cassinese congregation, and Marty Martin and the Swiss American congregation. These are your two big ones even to this day in the United States. But there was also Isidore Robert and the French, or the Solesmes congregation, which are renowned for their chant, and their Gregorian chant especially. The Solesmes Antiphonale is widely used and widely considered the best in the church. Another one not mentioned here because it only has two foundations in the United States is the EBC, or English Benedictine Congregation. They are small, but they are old in their heritage. So there is unity in our heritage. We all use the rule of St. Benedict. We all have the Benedictine tradition of ora and labora, of work and prayer and office. We have a Benedictine renewal that came in the 19th century following the Napoleonic Wars and the end of the suppression of the monasteries. There's a common language among many of the Benedictines in the United States, either German or French. French being actually the Swiss as well. You have to understand the dynamics of Switzerland. A missionary charism. The United States, at the time the Benedictines came, were missionary territory under the promulgation for the Congregation for the Promulgation of the Faith. Woo! Catholic Church and our very long congregational titles. And we have this heritage of contemplation and action. And each congregation will emphasize different aspects of that. The Swiss, more contemplative. The American Cassinese, more active in their initial ministry, with now more of a movement to an equilibrium where the two are almost indistinguishable. There is also a unity of purpose. There is a pastoral care for the immigrants, a desire to educate, again, the Catholics that we encountered, primarily working with the immigrant classes. They needed an educational system because the public school system we have now was non-existent in the 1850s, 1860s, and those public schools that did exist took it as their job to Protestantize most of the Catholics that they encountered, or as they said, nativize and Americanize them. And there's this evangelization and ministry activity, this missionary zeal that consumes much of the ministries of all the congregations that come. But there's great diversity in apostolates, which means our activities, our works. Some are missionaries to the immigrants, others to Native Americans. Others, like Belmont Abbey in the South, welcomed freed slaves following the war between the states. There is primary, secondary, college, and seminary education. There is pastoral care and parish work. We have different governances, different constitutions. We have the American Cassinese Constitution. We have the Swiss American. We have the English Benedictine. We have the Solesmes. They are all different rules that govern the different confederations, the different tribes, so to speak, that are bound in this unity. There are monks and there are nuns. There are males and there are females. There are clerics, priests, and choir monks, and there were lay brothers back in the day, and we still have some men who are lay brothers, though they are now part of the choir. And we also have European heritage and commonness there. Contemplation, action, and rural versus city. All of this is very different depending on where you are and where you're from.